With the rise of the nationalist fervor, there came to the forefront a pan-India party that took over the political scene in the colonial India. That was the Indian National Congress. But the formation of Indian National Congress has its own story. And in order to know that, we will have to delve into the details of how the Indian National Congress was formed. Definitely, a party such as the Indian National Congress had its inception from the early nationalists who formed the party and then later developed it into the Pan-India Party, which covered the prime scene during the mass movements in the Indian freedom struggle. So when this idea of nationalism was in rise in India, we could notice that there were various associations that were being formed in India so that these various nationalist activities could be put in place. The very first amongst them was the Landholders Society that was formed as the Association of Landlords in Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. And the second most important was the Bengal Indian British Society, which was formed as an association which was found in Calcutta that ideally would want to safeguard the interest of the Indians. Now, in order to understand various associations that were in rise at that point of time, we need to capture the basic thought that during the era that we are speaking of, when the British had taken the administrative control over the Indian colony, there were the Indians who did not have that much of political knowledge as to how to organize themselves. But they did realize the fact that sooner or later India will have to move to self-governance. And the first steps of self-governance, in fact, or the idea to self-rule India came from the early nationalists. And this basic point was taken from the associations itself, which actually looked forward to organize the people in order to move ahead and create the political scene for the Indians. So we see that other than the Landholders Society or the Bengal Indian Society, the Chennai Native Association and the Mumbai Presidency Association were such similar associations that came into existence and started to politically organize the Indian masses. So one of the most important amongst them was the East India Association and the Indian National Association. Why? Because these were created as the most important political associations at that point of time. Now, as we move ahead to talk about the coming up of INC, we need to realize that INC, as we have discussed, came ahead only because of the early nationalists. Now, the early nationalists were ideally the people or the group of people who we could state as the intelligentsia. So they were educated, and most of them belonged from very well established background. And these people who were educated, most of them did gain Western education as well. They were coming forward and trying to bring changes in the Indian society, thus to appeal to the Britishers to maybe somewhat change the outlook of the British legislations that were being brought out in India. So most of the time, these Indian early nationalists are looked at as very, as people who were very moderate with their choice of political association and the way they organized politics. But these were also the people who laid the founding stones. And one of them was Dadabhai Naoroji. Now, Dadabhai Naoroji, as a eminent person in the nationalistic development in India and the development of political scene in India, has an eminent role that he played. Dadabhai Naoroji founded the East India Association in London in 1866, and he was also a person who was voted as the only Indian member as the MP in the British Parliament. So Dadabhai Naoroji was an educated individual who believed in the fact that, in fact, British came to India to help the Indians. The only fact was that the British did not know the Indian natives, neither did they know the Indian problems. Once they would come to realize the structure of the Indian problems, they would definitely cater to solving it. That was something that Dadabhai Naoroji, ardently believed in. And to sort of voice the problems that Indians were facing, he went abroad and continuously tried to regulate these changes that he thought that the Britishers would pay heed to. Now, Dadabhai Naoroji, who is also known as the Grand Old Man of India, did establish certain objectives for the East India Association. So we see that the association was to raise India's genuine grievances before the British. Second, the association also had branches in Bombay and Madras, and thus we can understand that it tended to mobilize the Indians into the movement as well. Now, this association was very popular and received support from several Englishmen and exhibited significant influence in the British Parliament. Now, because Dadabhai Naoroji, as we noted, he had become, a member as an MP of the British Parliament, he made it a point to state, to voice the grievances. And in doing so, Dadabhai Naoroji also gained, certain British Englishmen who supported his sort of point of view in the British Parliament. So Dadabhai Naoroji not only established the East India Association, but he was also a person who worked to create the Indian mindset and to create the political mindset, nationalist mindset of the Indian people. In doing so, Dadabhai Naoroji established the fact that there was a huge amount of drain of wealth from India to Britain to abroad. Now, one of the famous books that Dadabhai Naoroji wrote that established this very theory of his, which is called Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Here, Naoroji illustrated the drain of wealth theory in his book, which was published in 1901. And this book still remains a pioneering work of that period to show the outlook of the nationalists. Now, if you would want to know more about the drain of wealth theory, then you can go and click on the iDictionary feature on the link given. So can you tell me who propounded the theory of drain of wealth? Was it W.C. Banerjee, Dadabhai Naoroji, Surendranath Banerjee, or Sir Syed Ahmad Khan? The correct answer will be Dadabhai Naoroji. So one of the other eminent personalities in developing the early nationalistic fervor in India was Surendranath Banerjee. Now, Surendranath Banerjee established the Indian National Association in Bengal in 1876, and by 1884, it almost had 44 branches across the country. Now, these associations that were being formed, as we did note, not only did it, try to bring out the grievances of the people at that point of time, but they also showcased, how the British were here to help the Indians out if the problems are pointed out. Now, the Indian National Association also had certain aims. The first was to create a strong body of public opinion. So the Indians ideally had to realize that they had certain political powers and had to voice their opinion. Second was to integrate the people of India based on shared ideas and interests. Third, to foster the Hindu-Muslim unity. So the early nationalists wanted to, gain the support of the Indian masses and not just one community. So they focused on the growth of the unity of all communities in India, so that they could voice their opinion as one. Fourth was to achieve the participation of masses in the national movement. So the national movement that was ultimately gaining ground at this point of time, the early nationalists in fact were the one who brought the people at the doorstep of the national movement. They showed the people a way, for the political movement that India could partake in. So these were the aims of the association. Now the association also not only aimed to achieve the objectives that we have discussed, but led certain protests against, first, the Arms Act, which prevented Indians from possessing arms without license, whereas the Europeans were allowed to do so. Second, the Vernacular Press Act, which prohibited indigenous press from printing anything against the British government. Third, civil service regulations, whereby the British reduced the minimum age from 21 to 19 years for Indians. And fourth, the poor working conditions of the workers in British-owned plantations and tenants in the zamindari tracts. So if you do take a look at these 4 points, you will note that, the association ideally wanted to bring in front of the Indian people the various problematic acts that the British had already established on the Indian masses, and they did voice their opinions against these acts, and of course called for the revocation of Arms Act, Vernacular Press Act, the fact that the age of the civil services were brought down. They not only voiced their opinions against the Arms Act or the Vernacular Press Act, but also, voiced their opinion against the civil services regulation that brought down the eligible age to sit for the examinations from 21 to 19 years for the Indians. So we see that the East India Association and the Indian National Association were some of the organizations that ultimately came forward or were made to voice the political opinions and sentiments of the people before the Indian National Congress was formed. So before, a pan-India structure came in front, it was these associations who dealt with the grievances of the Indians. Secondly, these early political organizations were mostly regional and thus had limited influence. So in order to sort of remember who were the people who came before the Indian National Congress, we have to realize that these associations did have certain drawbacks as well. And the biggest drawback was that this was not a pan-India structure. It was in fact regional and had limited focus. Thirdly, an all-India political association was required to provide unity in action and thereby strengthen the national movement. Now, we have seen time and again in history that without, an all-round leadership or an all-round appeal, most of the times the movement will fail. So in order for the national movement to be carried forward, it could not arise from one region, it could not be region-specific. Thus, we clearly get the fact that these associations did not have a pan-India appeal, and there was a necessity for an all-India political party that could take the national movement forward. So this is the point of time we reach in the juncture where we see that these early nationalists did garner a lot of support from various, Englishmen. Now, there was a particular face who came forward and actually provided the impetus for the formation of the Indian National Congress. And that name is Alan Octavian Hume. Now, what exactly did Alan Octavian Hume do? What he did was he invited the Indians to form an organization that would serve India. Now, here we have to realize the fact that in India at that point of time, to serve or work for Indians in administrative sectors was not allowed by the British. So the highest cadre was in fact a British person. So what Hume focused at when he gave a call for the Indians to organize in such a way was that to allow the people to serve the Indians and point out the fallacies in the British administration and direct programs in a well-defined manner to get remedies implemented. So interesting enough was the fact when these Indians would organize, they would not only look at the grievances of the Indians because they would know the native grievances because they are native people. They could also come up with better solutions that most of the time maybe the British could not. And Hume therefore asked these people to come forward and form an all India organization. So Indian National Union was started in 1884, which was later renamed as the Indian National Congress in 1885. So the first All India Convention was held in Mumbai at Gokuldas Tejpal Sanskrit College from December 28 to 31st in 1885. So we see that the All India Congress is already formed and now it is moving into its first session. So the first session, as you can see, the picture of the first session of Indian National Congress, which was held in Mumbai in 1885, where 72 delegates from all over the country were present. And this session was headed by Umesh Chandra Banerjee, who was the president of the first session of INC. So the second session, which was again followed after the first session, which was held in Mumbai, happened in Kolkata in 1886 under the presidency of Dadabhai Naoroji, which was attended by 450 delegates. So you can very well therefore understand that these early nationalists were the people who organized the national movement in a pan-India level. So let's take a look at the objectives of INC as lucidly stated by W.C. Banerjee. So the first is to promote friendship among the nationalist political workers across the country so that this becomes a unified political movement. Second, to organize and develop Indian public opinion, to develop the political knowledge that the Indians would require to move ahead in the movement. Third, to take heed of the opinions of educated classes on vital social issues and present this forcefully before the government. So at this point of time, India also had certain social evils that needed to be addressed. And therefore, it was, in fact, in the working mandate of INC to take care of these social evils and to think about how to bring a change in the society. Fourth was to develop and consolidate unity among Indians, irrespective of race, caste, religion, or province. Fifth, to formulate popular demands and present them before the government for their implementation. So like we are discussing, time and again, the fact that the early nationalists thought that the Britishers would in fact listen to them and also, listen to the common opinion that would be formed in India, whether it was grievances or whether it was certain inputs that India wanted to give with regards to its society. So all these, aspects were taken so that India could represent itself to the British government and deal with the issues that were rising in the Indian state so that the British could understand the Indians better. And lastly, we see to determine the political task to be undertaken. So thus, to ascertain a political path that India would have to take to achieve this movement, which was the national movement. Now, the fact here was that, we might question that did the British actually listen to the INC, or, how did the British react to the formation of INC? Because till now we have seen and we have noted the fact that all political processes were in fact stopped by the British in India. Now, what changed? What happened that the British accepted INC as an All India party? So what happened was the British saw this as an opportunity to create a safety valve, because the Indians could actually state their grievances to their native party, which could handle the grievances and deal with the common people, deal with the Indian masses. Thus, we can understand that the INC had an outlook, a political outlook per se, to give INC the, place that it required as an All India party. Now, this aspect to accept INC as an All India party was given by Lord Dufferin, who was the Governor General and Viceroy of India from 1884 to 1888. So INC therefore would serve as a safety valve for the British to prevent a revolt similar to the one in 1857, and also because, see, at that point of time, INC was being led by the moderates, by the early nationalists, whose demand were, very moderate, and they did not really want to harm the British. In fact, they thought that the British rule was necessary in India. So INC demanded, modest changes and accepted the overall supremacy of British India, and the moderates in fact went ahead to state the very fact that the British were needed in India to bring these changes. So let's take a look at the achievements of the Indian National Congress quickly. First, to succeed in building strong public opinion to arouse political consciousness and national spirit among the people. Second, the strength of delegates increased from 72 in the first session to 440 in the second session and to 607 in the third session. Thus, you can understand that you can understand how popular the All India Congress had become and how much support it garnered. Thirdly, united the Indians under one roof and gave them the voice to protest against the British government, in fact to realize that the Indians had a political part to play. Provided the much needed platform which later helped the Indians to launch much stronger movements against the British, like the non-cooperation movement, Quit India movement and others. So this formation of the INC could be seen as a precursor to the upcoming mass movements that would ultimately lead the British to leave India. Thus we saw that the Indian National Congress comes to the forefront as an All India party, which would ultimately create a platform for the mass movements to take place in, and also that would give the people an umbrella which they could gather in to create these mass movements and to take forward their agitation against the British.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So, at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So, register for free now.